Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Visiting Writers Series kickoff for 2020, fall 2020. I'm Steve Hayward. I'm chair of the English department. And I want to start off by saying that this series, the Visiting Writers Series, is sponsored by the Colorado College English Department with the support of the McLean Visiting Writers Endowment. Colorado College is located in Colorado Springs, Colorado, within unceded territory of the Ute peoples. The earliest documented peoples also include the Apache, Arapaho, Comanche, and Cheyenne. An extended list of tribes with a legacy of occupation in Colorado can be found on the Indigenous Community at CC webpage. This semester, Visiting Writers events will be on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. They are open to the public, but advanced registration is required. To see this year's schedule and the links that will allow you to register in advance, go to the English department page on the Colorado College website and look for the link for the Visiting Writers series. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for more dates and reader info. Our next event is next week, Tuesday, September 8th at 5 p.m. when you're invited to join us for a discussion of Professor Michael Sawyer's new book, Black-Minded, The Political Philosophy of Malcolm X. Again, you can find all the info about how to register in advance for that event on the Visiting Writers series at the English department website. Our featured reader tonight is Professor Nate Marshall, and here to introduce him is CC student Rain Fox. Rain is an English major on the poetry creative writing track and is a self-described failed vegetarian. They have worked with Professor Marshall in a variety of settings, including a close collaboration on the forthcoming podcast, Candied Yams, which explores the possibilities of a Black QT literary canon. Rain is also last year's winner of the Evelyn Bridges Poetry Contest. Over to you, Rain, and thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Rain Fox, as Steve just said. It is my honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Nate Marshall. Nate is an award-winning author, editor, educator, and speaker. His book, Wild Hunteds, was honored with the Black Caucus of the American Library Association's Award for Poetry Book of the Year and the Great Lakes College Association New Writers Award. He is an editor of the BreakBeat Poets, New American Poetry, and the Age of Poetry, in the Age of Hip Hop, and co-curates the BreakBeat Poets series for Haymarket Books. He is also assistant professor of English at Colorado College. He has had significant influence on my own work as an artist and club administrator. It is an incredible privilege to be in collaboration with him, and I am honored and privileged and so proud to call him my mentor. Please welcome Nate Marshall. Thank you.
Oh no. Oh no. It's me, I'm here. Damn. Cool. All right. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is so strange because it's like just me. I feel like I'm just here by myself, but that's okay. Yes, and my partner Allison C. Rollins. All right. I will start with this poem. Again, thank you so much to the English department, to Steve, and Tanya, who've been great in just helping think through how we approach visiting writers this year. And of course, to Rain for the introduction. Cool. This poem is called Nate Marshall is a White Supremacist from Colorado, or Nate Marshall is a Poet from the South Side of Chicago, or I Love You, Nate Marshall. I guess what you should know going into this, I'm not the only person with the name Nate Marshall, shockingly. There's another gentleman by that name who is a white supremacist from Colorado. When I first made my name Nate, I was a boy at summer camp looking for cool in the muggy shadows. And so when the white boy snipped Nathaniel to just a touch of the tongue to the mouth roof, it seemed to me a religious moment, a new confirmation as okay. This was 2000, and you must have been Nate Marshall for decades by then. I find you years later, buried in a Google search, and follow you silently for the next year like a high school crush. I tell my students about you, The day when we wonder, what if privilege hadn't put us in a college classroom? I tell my ex about you in bed, and it's convenient that there's this other Nate Marshall to be the liar lying there this time. I see your failed campaign and watch how your ties to white supremacists spelled your demise. My Black History Month paper on the Black Panthers in 3rd grade wouldn't color me radical enough, and I am ashamed I've never been pushed out of a spotlight for loving my people too much. Your day job is roofing, and I just watch HGTV in hotels. You are the truer amongst us, Nate. You, peddler of propaganda and seller of shingles. Can you show me how to love what you love? Every time I've said, what's good, nigga? It's possible we've matched our mouths, symmetrical around the 2 G's in the middle. I won't lie to you, Nate Marshall, or to myself, Nate Marshall. I too have hated a nigga and lived to tweet the tale. I too have sat suspicious in my basement, wondering who was coming for my country. I too have Googled myself and found a myself I despise. Once you left Twitter, after I told my people to tell you that they loved you and your book and your commitment to Black people. And I feel you, Nate Marshall. I've left places and loves when they told me they loved a Nate Marshall I didn't recognize. Cool. Wonderful. Cool. Oh, what's up, Catherine? Cool. So yeah, that's one of the early poems in the book. And there's a series of these sort of like other Nate Marshall poems. Maybe I'll read another one of those. I'm trying to think what you need to know about this. So I guess one thing I should say about this poem, it's sort of, in a way I find it interesting because this next poem does a bit of like speculative work about family, which has always been like something of interest to me, like both my own family, but also the ways in which we think about family as a society, and particularly the way in which like Black people either make or remake or unmake family in this society, right? Particularly folks who have descended from slavery and who have these sort of like, very particular fissures in their ability to access a kind of lineage, right? A kind of longer lineage. So this poem does a little bit of speculative work. And I've been thinking sort of about this poem because like the other week I found out that one of the folks that blurbed the book, that was kind enough to read the book and prior and blurb it, is actually like a distant cousin of mine. This was like entirely incidental. It's this writer Mitchell Jackson. Like, we are not from the same place. We like met each other just through conferences and through all this stuff. And it turns out he's like my like 3rd cousin or something. And so, yeah, so this feels kind of apropos of that. This is called Another Nate Marshall Origin Story. So for the purposes of this story, let's say turn of the 20th century, my great grandfather Marshall disappeared so thoroughly nobody know what he looks like. So let's say he's super high yellow, so much so maybe he's swarthy if he stays out of sun. And so in this story, he drops my grandpops and then pulls out of Mississippi to step west and stretch his legs as a white man. So let's say he has a whole white family with a little boy. And let's say he overcorrects because he knows the color the boy carries without knowing. So he tells the little boy, we don't associate with those people. And that little boy has a whole lineage who don't talk to those people. So maybe the name Marshall is just a passing story we'll never uncover. Maybe he's secret Black like a Hollywood actor, but maybe he knows and wants his name back and his body too. Cool. All right. Man. Cool. Also, I guess, you know, there will be a Q&A, but I get in preparation for that. If questions come up about specific poems or just in the course of the reading that you want to ask, you feel free to just drop them in the Q&A box. I sort of grieve that there's not like a chat where people can be, you know, talking foolishness and whatnot, but I suppose that is necessary so that, you know, as it goes. Cool. All right. I'll do this next. So, yeah. This poem is called Bald Fade. Oh, Erica, yeah, turn on the chat. Why not? Yeah, let's turn on the chat. Let the people talk. Look, I trust them. Y'all trust me. I trust you. We're in the circle of trust. Yeah, we'll do that. Cool. Yeah, welcome. Now you can chat. Dang, it's crazy out here. Cool. So this poem is called Bald Fade. There's not really anything you need to know. I guess a content warning that this poem like makes a reference to sexual assault and like child sexual abuse. So yeah. Bald Fade. Richard could slice a nigga from fro to Caesar in 17 flat. He dream genius of diminishing black curl. He used to pick me up Saturday mornings, stop and cop me McDonald's hotcakes. He sat me in the back of the shop while opening, let me eat and then readied me for the slice, the bald fade, the 90s cut up front neat, the back graphics, the rounded fro, the cornrow lining, the Michael Jordan Daddy Deluxe. My head, a democratic laboratory for nap possibility. My head lived in Richard's hands. Richard was our family friend. Haircut on credit, close. Hand me candy store money, close. Leave me the Curtis comic strips, close. First school dance, get me right, close. Down the street, close. Try to fuck my sister, close. Never went to prison, close. Check his sex offender registry listing, close. Map the route to his house, close. Consider repaying his cut, close. Saw him at the gas station last summer, walked right past my pump, close. He who made my wave pattern didn't recognize me at the pump after hair loss and decade plus of thickening into man. He would only know me from the way my dome pinches slightly up front, a mark he made when he gave his first fade. Cool. All right, I'll read this one. So this is, there's a sort of visual element to this poem that I can't really describe. Just know that the poem visually for me, like I was trying to sort of emulate what, if you've ever seen the game Double Dutch, right? Folks like jumping rope, right, with 2 ropes. So this is called Only Boy. When I was 6, my grandmother gave me a $1 for pushing a girl to the concrete during Double Dutch. The girl, nameless now in my head, was a head taller and 3 years older and believed my face looked best streaked red by the clothes wire. When KK babysat us as toddlers, she would sling my tough hair into small puffs with her barrette balls. Mama asked her why. In 7th grade, I dry humped high school girls to juke mixes and basements as unfinished as I. My reasons for being at those parties was to chaperone a sister 10 months my senior. I never knew the business end of a curfew. Took the city by train anywhere I could imagine. Mama told me be home by the time I was alive, still young and praying over a rare family dinner. My voice cracks through the uncertain absolution. We all hold hands, mine no bigger than theirs. All my sisters huddle into the car to go together. Girls' night. I watch them leave. I hold a book in front of my face. As a baby, I didn't start talking until late. My sister suggested I go to a special doctor to inspect my head to see where the language had gone. I did not talk much. I say little now that I mean with my whole self in public. I'm whipped with jump rope or I am pushing. Cool. Yeah, Catherine, I was turning the book. So it's sort of hard to like show here, but if you look at it, some of the stanzas are upside down. And so to like effectively read the poem, I have to sort of double dutch the book. All right. Let's see. I read this. So this poem is, what do you need to know about this poem? There's a poem that I really love by the poet Francine J. Harris. This poem is after. And in that poem, she sort of like, the speaker is kind of talking about this woman who's like a part of the speaker's community, who she just doesn't really like very much, right? And there's a kind of turn or sort of revelation. And so I had to think about, for this poem, I tried to, I guess, do something similar, not necessarily with a person that I personally had animus towards, but with someone who had a kind of like contested space in my community. So this poem is called Darla, I Don't Know When, to April 7, 2016, after Francine J. Harris. It's not that I didn't like you. It's more that you were never much of anything to me, except always around. Here you are riding my granddaddy's back outside of our house when y'all showed up drunk again and us kids were the only ones there. You again at Thanksgiving saying something stupid that we all ignore and then saying it again. It's not that I didn't like you. It's more that you were never very smart. The type of woman to have to think about the question when asked her own name. The kind of woman to take up with a married man and never seem to feel anything on the subject. It's not that I didn't like you. It's more, my mama couldn't fucking stand you. It's not her fault, but she couldn't hate her daddy for sins. And so you gotta hold this one down on his behalf. It's not that I didn't like you. It's more, I barely knew your name growing up. You were just hussy or tramp or slut or grandma looking teary-eyed at the deflated speed bag in the basement. It's not that I didn't like you. It's more I never expected you to die, which is stupid when I saw you never really lived your own life. You just granddaddy's shadow, same stumble and bad brain, same sweet pride over this selfish boy named Armstead. It's not that I didn't like you. It's more, I just never thought about you for real. It's not that I didn't like you. It's more, I didn't know you had kids or siblings. I didn't know you were like a real person. Forgive me, this selfish boy named Armstead, who stopped in his tracks when he saw your mama collect the extra obituaries saying, I need these. I need to tell anybody who come by about my baby, my sweet, sweet child. Cool. All right. Let's see. What's my time like? All right. Cool. I'll read this. I'm very bad at like vacations. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if other people are like this, but I'm like tremendously shitty at taking vacations. Because after like a day, I'm like, okay, what should I be doing? Or I bring a bunch of books, and it just like, I like make them into work because I just don't, yeah, whatever. So this is called Ode to Vacation. Oh, vacation, you are a word I know the meaning of, but don't know. When I was young, there was that lone family trip to a water park in Wisconsin. In college, there was the week we had in South Carolina with my best friend's family. We went on plantation tours to see the beautiful gardens, and all I could see was blood and flowers. I still wonder who keeps ground on those plots now, though I bet I can guess. Vacation. We met again in Guatemala, and I asked not to, but we are here with an ex-love because the flights were paid and the trip planned. On the plane home, she got an upgrade to first class and had me sit next to her since the flight was empty, though I was still coach. 45 minutes into the flight, they checked my ticket and I got moved back where I belonged. Vacation. I don't get you, or rather, I don't give you the time, and I don't take the time off. It's my lineage, dear vacation. I'm from 2 jobs at minimum and retiring, only to turn the house to a home business. The story goes that more than one of my relations used to visit dope houses in their work uniforms, and maybe the high is also an occupation. Vacation. I have tax forms and under the table work falling out of my head like hair. I haven't seen a week of mine end since I was at least 18. Vacation. You a lie, and I don't lie. Down for much of anything these days. Cool. All right. Oh man. Whew. What should I read next? Cool. All right. Yeah, I'll read this. I've been thinking a lot about my family just because, I don't know, because I haven't seen a lot of them over the last bunch of months, obviously, perhaps. Cool. And so, I'll read this. I think, I don't know. I was talking to my sister the other day because she like sat and read the book in one sitting. Like they're all my family got copies of the book and they're starting to sort of engage with them. And so they'll call me and like give me notes on poems or be like, yeah, I like this one, or, you could have, whatever. Like, I don't know. They're just like trying to workshop the poems. I'm like, it's done. It's a wrap. Like, no more, no mas. But yeah, this one, my nephew got to spend the summer with us. And so I'll read this one. This is a poem for Justin. Because you asked for one when I told you to stop jumping on me that night as I was writing. Because your favorite Jay-Z song is December 4th for his mother's voice and Jay's story about his life. Because I told you the first song you heard in your young life was I Used to Love Her in the hospital room with my big headphones over your soft head. Because you asked me your first word and I said I didn't know, and I could have told you a good lie and made that a small poem we share. Because when you spend the night, you take my clothes and drape them over yourself like a prayer shawl. Because you clown me to my friends and impersonate me in a way that says, I see you, uncle. Because you ask me if I love all books since I have so many, and I say only the ones that tell us who we are. Because I ask you what I should write about, and you say, write about us. Cool. Yeah, no, I love the conversation happening in the chat. You're right, a poem is never done, but at a certain point, I gotta leave it alone, just for my own sanity. But the funny thing about it is like folks now being like, oh yeah, I have this idea, is like I sent them the book like 6 months before it was due. Like when I had a draft, I like sent it to them. And so I'm like, fam, like I appreciate this note. You're late though. Like, God bless. You know, such is life. I'll read this one since Natanya sort of requested it. This is called Landless Acknowledgement. And this, you know, there's a couple of poems in the book. There's probably about 4 poems in the book that were written in the last like year or so, since I've moved to Colorado and started CC. And this is absolutely one of those poems. This is, you know, I think very much a Colorado poem, right? Landless Acknowledgement. Before we get started, we would like to acknowledge that we live on some unceded bones. Sometimes, me and mine imagine ancestral homes. All I got so far is Montgomery, Alabama. Maybe a boat, maybe a plot of land somewhere so far from the south sides I've claimed that I would get lost on the way. I admit, sometimes my homies talk about their families immigrating and I get jealous. We lost the land we were custodians over before I was a twinkle in the eye of a twinkle in the eye of a twinkle in the eye. Closest I got to a homeland is my mama's Caucasian pitch on the phone calling the police. Closest I got to a homeland is never calling the police. Closest I got to a homeland is my daddy's laugh in a spades game. Closest I got to a homeland is my lover's tongue talking or otherwise. Closest I got to a homeland is the funk under a DJ's needle in my handful of a dance partner. Not to be dark, but I am. Not to be dark, but the planet is on fire. Not to be dark, but they move in capitals because the water is coming up. Not to be dark, but our bones are in that water too. Maybe that's my capital. Once the polar capitals melt and there's a whole lot less land for folks to buy and sell and steal, maybe everybody will feel a little more dark, will feel a little more homelandless like we do. Why you think I call my compatriots homies? Maybe ain't no home, except for how your beloveds cuss or pray or pronounce. Cool. Yeah, Lisa, you said, yeah, man. Lisa, when you get here, we got to play some socially distanced spades. I don't know if, is that possible? Does that work? I don't know if that works. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah, we got this. All right. Let me see. Nah, I want to read this one next. All right. This is called On. The only thing you need to know is I'm from Chicago, in case that's shocking to anyone and you haven't been paying attention for the last year or whatever. I'm from Chicago. And a thing that we used to do, that we still do in Chicago, when you're trying to like, a way of like making a promise or sort of like swearing that something is true is by putting it on something. So you might say like, oh, on my mama, right? Or, you know, I put that on everything, right? Etc. Right. This is not only a Chicago thing, but it is particularly a Chicago thing in some ways. This is called On. The highest promise we could offer was one to a land or man or idea greater than we. Someone would exclaim, on folk, I made that shot. Or on chief, I got her number. Or on boss, I ain't see anything that night. When we put covenants on everything we loved, this suggested seriousness. We were not allowed to love in any fickle way. In the revisionist history of my hood genesis, I would be more honest than honest. Put things on my Huffy bike, on my report card, on my citizenship award, on my mama's golden NA necklace, on my grandma's favorite chair, on my father's attention and the warm air he left each time he fled. After Pierre got shot and his bullet gifter walked the same blocks as the rest of us in uneasy Omerta, I didn't think he died. How could he, when his name became a vow for us all? Each street dispute punctuated with on P to prove us tellers of truths. When Bird got jumped, his spinal column crushed, I assume he made his street name true, a different kind of flight. Everything sacred between ragtown boys now enveloped in the parchment of On Bird and carried away. Cool. All right. Let's see, what is our time like? So maybe I'll do like 3 more poems. Yeah, we'll do that. That seems like a good number. 3 is a good number. Maybe 3 or 4. Who knows? Whatever. Y'all not doing nothing. Y'all just in the house. Cool. I'll read this one. This is called Imagine. The only thing you really need to know about, well, I guess the thing that would be helpful for you to know about this poem is my partner Allison. Her middle name is Canada. So yeah, so you should just know that her middle name is Canada. It'll make sense in a second. You better imagine like your life depends, because it does. That boredom out of which making is made is the only thing. Consider that somebody first had to pick through all the prehistoric plants and sniff and taste and sometimes diarrhea or even die, just so you would know that a collard green with the right seasoning is a season that lasts centuries. Consider that somebody gazed at a star and said, I bet, and built a fire. Consider the first Negro on the first plantation who figured which way was north, maybe before they knew the word for north, and ran. Consider my love with the middle name the enslaved dreamed of running towards. See how I move swift in her direction. Consider how love is a great idea we keep having every day. We imagine being together, and that is the first step. Cool. All right. Jesse, you're funny. Cool. All right. Yeah, I'll do this one. This is called Which Art, What Fact? I'm trying to think. Yeah. What do you need? So I wrote this poem. I had to do this. I did a few years ago. This is maybe like 2016. I did this reading at the Art Institute of Chicago. And they for this sort of series, they asked poets and writers to kind of be in conversation with a specific part of the museum's holdings, right? And so they asked me to sort of give this reading, and I was in the part of the museum where they have like the African art and the Native American art. And so like in doing that, to kind of prepare, I went to the museum a bunch, and a thing that I kind of noticed or was kind of thinking about, and that was the way in which that kind of like colonized people or conquered people's art was like the things that were in those art exhibits were largely, they were sort of like household items, right? Or like regular things. They were like things, right? It was like, oh, here's like someone's dress. Here's like the thing that people wore to like weddings. Here's, you know, like bowls and like utensils and things like that, which was very different than like much of the rest of the museum and where the European art was, right? Where it's like these frescoes and things that were made as fine art pieces, right? And so I was kind of just thinking about that when I wrote this poem. Yeah, crafts, right? What Natanya said. All right. Which art, what fact? Every day, I act permanent. A silly collection of carbon and oxygen and sometimes heart, and too often cruelty or callous or I just wasn't thinking. My bad. Each week I move around as if nobody will steal me again, or my things again. And I'll ponder if which museum we end up in is a matter of power, who hangs and who does the cutting. After all, what is science but a set of contemporary creation stories? What histories are natural and what artifacts art? How do we decide the borders of a country or an era or a solar system? When did we decide our planet meant only this collection of green? What I mean is this: take this bowl the people used to mix and eat. What of the clothes the people wore to say, let us be one on this day of marriage? What of this staff the people made to love their gods? What of their gods who are maybe our gods with the names that lost, the prayers that got colonized away? In this section of the Museum for the Darker People, I make sense. In the Museum of Chicago, I have always been in the section for the darker people. And I presume once this president or the next wipes us up, perhaps our everyday particulars will be art. The Afro pick I push in the naps of my beard might one day have a name in a plastic box for preservation. Maybe the cheap dress shoes I spun in for my first high school homecoming will be a prime example of primitive garb for worship. Maybe my mother's coffee cup with lipstick kissed on its chipped face will be one of these art things in its next life. Oh, whatever God or whatever ancestor that wins in the next life, I pray, let me be an artifact of use. Let all my poems be bowls or thrones or hairpieces or marriages. Let everything I make, if it should survive, tell the next world mine were a people of faculty and faith. Let them know we were a race who prayed with our legs and sweat. Let them know that even when we are just art, we were here and we still are. Cool. All right. This is called Fit 11, which is a number, I don't know. How much is owed to those who wore the chains, who tilled the land, who nursed the babes, who mixed the grits, who fried the food, who chopped the wood, who picked the bowls, who ran the road, who fought the war, who shared the crop, who made the name, who wore the noose, who blacked the codes, who sparked the schools, who juked the blues, who showed the soul, who left the South, who stayed the course, who caught the hell, who marched the march, who broke the strike, who struck the blow, who took the vote, who held the hood, who housed the club, who queered the notes, who spun the jam, who funked the flow, who built the thing, who built the thing, who built the thing. You know, take the payment you ain't give for all that and press it down, make it overflow, fit 11 times and give me that in my own numbers of my own currency. Cool. I guess I'll end with this one. Thank you all so much. You all are very nice audience, hypothetically speaking. You all could be doing like your laundry right now. Maybe you are. That's cool too. Someone has to do the laundry. All right. This poem is called Finna. It's the title poem of the book. Yeah, and I mean, I'll talk sort of more about the titling of the book or whatever, perhaps in the Q&A, but one of the things that I love about the word finna is I feel like it's this word that that particularly a lot of Black folks have some relationship with, even if it was just like hearing a cousin say it and be like, what is that? Or, you know, saying it and then being corrected by older folks being like, that's not a word. now you have detention, or just don't say that no more. It's not ain't, it's aren't, right? It's one of these kinds of things. And so yeah, so it's kind of a cool, there's a phrase I have a lot of love for because of it's a phrase that I think so many people have this sort of relationship with. Yeah. Finna, for Juanita and the Perspectives Leadership Academy class of 2016. So this one time I was finna say finna in an academic context, and a voice in my head said, shouldn't you be worried about using a word that ain't a word? And I was like, word. And for a long time, that was how I let my life happen. I let my mind tell me a million no's that the world had implanted in me before I even formed questions. I let my power be dulled by my fear of fitting. But I remember a million finnas I avoided to get here. Like the day them dudes jumped me off the bus and I was finna get stomped out like a loose square. Or the day they got to shooting at the park and I was finna catch one like an alley-oop. Or the day my grandma died and my grades dropped and I was finna not finish high school, except I had a praying mama and good teachers and poems to write. I'm thankful for all these finnas that never were. And when I remind myself of who I've always been, I remember why my finna is so necessary. Finna comes from the Southern phrase fixing to, like I come from my Southern grandmothers. And finna is this word that reminds me about everything next. Even when I've been a broken boy, I know I'm fixing to get fixed. I'm finna be better. Every dream I have is a finna away from achievement. Each new love I uncover is a finna I unfold. Every challenge I choose to meet and not let defeat me is a finna I fight for. My hope is like my language, is like my people. It's Black and it's brown and it's alive and it's laughing and it's growing and it's alive and it's learning and it's alive and it's fighting and it's alive and it's finna take on this wide world with a whole slang for possibility. Cool. Thank y'all so much. All right. Thank you, Allison. Cool. Are there questions, I guess? Yeah, any questions, comments, concerns, complaints? Just yeah, send Steve the complaints. Don't send them to me. I don't want them. But yeah.
We have a question, Nate, in the Q&A from Lisa Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you haven't yet described to us all the meaning of finna, although it's such a lovely vernacular defined on the book cover. But say more. Can you do that? You say a little bit more about finna?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, first off, hi, Lisa Lee. How are you? Yeah, Lisa's great people, Chicago legend. But I think, yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, right, I kind of had the title before I had much of the book, right? Before I really had any poems. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna write a book and it's gonna be called Finna. Just because I thought it was kind of a dope title, but I think beyond that, how can I say? Beyond that, it was, I think much of how I initially imagined the book was coming out of my first sort of set of projects, right? So back in 2015, in the before time of the before time, kind of, right? It feels like entirely different eon. But back then, when I first released both the BreakBeat Poets anthology and also my first book, Wild Hundreds, it was, I was touring around with those collections, and one of the things that struck me, particularly when people talked about Wild Hundreds, they talked about, and specifically white folks and non-Black folks, were really comfortable, and in some way, they would often talk about the book as a sort of like tragic book, right? They would talk about it as like a sad story, and that just struck me because I didn't think I had written a sad book, right? Like I thought of Wild Hundreds as this really loving book, right? And in a lot of ways, it's a book that was a sort of celebration, right? So I think rather than sort of wanting to re-engage with that conversation and be like, no, in fact, that's not the sort of book I wrote or whatever. What I kind of realized, or what I came to, was like the people that were responding to the book in that way, that was the book they read. And I mean, that's fine. I think everyone has like a sort of right to their own reading. And that doesn't mean they didn't like the work, but it did make me think about like, how do I actually talk to the people who I mean to talk to? And using a title like Finna was kind of helpful for me, because it was this sort of shibboleth, right? Like, I think a lot of Black folks and like particular other folks, right, get excited when they see a book titled that way, or they, like peak something, right? And then some folks are like, what is that word? Is that even a word? Fina, like they sort of they just don't really know what it is, which is okay, right? The book is sort of there for them too, as is the nature of a thing one mass produces. But but I think all of my titles have acted as a kind of like shibboleth. Shibboleth meaning like a way that you can, a small thing that that kind of shows who's a sort of insider to a certain set of knowledge and who is not, right? So while Hunnits, right, like if you're a native of Chicago, particularly if you're a Black person who came from Chicago, you see that title and immediately means something to you, and you're like, oh snap, what is this book? And if you see Finna, right, like a similar thing probably happens, right, for a slightly different set of people. And so I'm just interested in titles that do that kind of work. And I guess I should also say I like the word Finna because it's all about what comes next. So it's about like what I'm about to do, right? It's like, no, Ma, I didn't wash the dishes or do any of the chores you told me to do this summer day, but I'm finna do it. So like, don't put me on punishment, right? But I like the futurity of it. So yeah. All right, Paul, what's up, Paul? Ask a question. How do you keep a healthy headspace as a creative during these times? Man, I don't know. If you got suggestions, give them to me, please. I think, so probably like a set of things. One, trying to like spend some dedicated time away from a screen every day, whether that's like spent listening to music or reading, or sometimes just like sitting, like talking on the phone, or just sitting, in the couch in my office and just staring. But just a little, like some built-in time where I'm not on a screen is really helpful. And then I think I've also been trying to use the time to like explore, just like kind of catch up on stuff, explore stuff that I've been meaning to check out, whether that's like books or TV or movies or whatever. I find that like I don't have the same kind of like headspace or ability to focus on reading in the way that I typically would. So I definitely have been doing a lot more watching of things, but yeah, but that's been helpful. That's been like a cool thing. Yeah. Other questions? Thoughts, comments, concerns? Oh, one other thing I guess I should say too is like, this is a super weird time and a super stressful time. And it is it's like easy to feel like, oh, I should be doing all these things. I should be like getting in the best shape of my life. I should be, balancing my books and doing all the stuff I didn't do before. I should be reading, knocking through my to be read pile and all that. And yeah, while it's true that you might kind of have more time in the day because you're not doing things like commuting or leaving your house very often or whatever, it's also a really stressful time, and that makes it hard to focus and hard to be productive in certain ways. And so I think just remembering to like be kind to yourself is really, really important in this moment. Let's see. I think, Ben, you got it. Bookshop.org is the way, if you don't have like a sort of preferred local bookstore. But I would also say if you, like now is the time to be supporting local bookstores as much as possible. So places I've been trying to support and like do stuff like as I need books or as I want books, trying to buy from, certainly Poor Richard's here in the Springs, and then back in Chicago, Volumes Book Cafe, and Seminary Co-op, and Pals, which is Chicago and Portland outfit, Semicolon Books, which is a Black woman-owned bookstore in Chicago. Let me not. Yeah, and I mean just like local bookstores, like as much as possible. And pretty much all of them have like an online thing, and you can do that. All right, let's see. Oh snap, we got mad questions. All right, all right. Catherine, how has it been launching in this era? I mean, yeah, it's weird, right? I think it is. I think I've had to like give myself a kind of permission to grieve certain things, right? And so what I mean is like, I come from, like I started out like doing poetry slam and doing spoken word. And so part of what it means, I think, to be in that sort of performance tradition is like, you get in front of people and you perform, right? Like I remember, there have been years of my life where I had open mics that I went to regularly, or I was constantly on the road or whatever. And so having that sort of like road warrior thing built into you, I think it can be really, it's just like hard to feel like you're doing the work to like support the book without like being out on the road, even though I've been doing a ton of readings and interviews and all that kind of stuff. It's just hard because you're not leaving your house, right? So I think I've had to like grieve some of that, right? Because I not only am I used to that kind of thing, but I do think I like it, right? Because I like going to different cities, like going to revisiting places that I've been and going to new places. And also, I love getting to connect with old friends, getting to meet new readers and new folks. And so, yeah, so not having that has been like, it's just been a thing, right? But it's cool. Yeah, thank you for that question. All right, Jaka, hey, what's up, man? Are you in Memphis now? I don't know. What's happening? All right, cool. Let's see. When is your revisions process done? How do you know when a poem is done, feels done to you? I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Paul Valery. I don't remember who it was. Someone said like, poems are never finished, they're abandoned. My head wants to say it was either Paul Valery or Gwendolyn Brooks, but I said it, whatever. I think that that's true. I don't think a poem is ever really done. And so like one thing that a lot of people might notice is if you search my poems online and find them published in like literary journals, they're almost always at least slightly different than the version that ends up in the book, because I like really am editing the whole time. And I think of that kind of publication. I think of publication as a part of my editing process, not as the end of my editing process, especially in the case of like anthologies, magazines, journals, that kind of stuff. But I think there's a certain point where, you feel comfortable with sort of like the swings of a poem, if that makes sense. Like you feel comfortable sort of where it's hitting, how it's sort of sitting in your mouth, sitting on the page, sitting with a reader or with an audience member. This is another reason why I think I like enjoy open mics as a sort of process, is because for me, open mics were really helpful in terms of like seeing how a poem would hit a crowd, like how they would respond to it, right? If they'd laugh at the parts I thought were funny, if they'd, weep at the parts I thought were sad or whatever, right? That kind of feedback is vital to me. But yeah, I don't know if there's not like a specific thing that happens, but I think once I find myself primarily messing with like the really, really small parts of the poem, then I know that it's close, right? And I can start to take it out into the world in some different ways. So, yeah, why did I not sit with the manuscript for those extra 6 months? Because I had an editor, dog. Like once you sign a contract, there's like you just, there's a schedule. So, you know, I often blow past those deadlines, but you can't blow past them too far or else the book doesn't come out. So that's the thing. Who am I writing for, writing to? Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people, I guess. One of the things about, I think, a second book for me, rather like that was different than the first book, is the first book, I think the idea of audience is entirely hypothetical. You're just like, wow, it's a miracle that I made a book that's going to be a thing in the world, right? That's cool. But I think with the second book, understanding like, oh, the audience is really there, and I know that there are people who I know and who I don't know who are gonna like want to read this book when it is out in the world. That's a different thing, and that is part of the thing I was sort of thinking about as I approached the collection. But I guess the best way I could say about the audience is my oldest sister, Jonquine, she called me the other day because she, you know, I gave all my sisters and my mom and pops like books or whatever. And she was like, yeah, I read this thing in one sitting and I don't remember the last time I read a book. And she like had poems she wanted to talk to me about. And she was like, this poem made me cry. I had to like read this poem again, whatever. That's who I'm writing for. Yeah. All right. Let's see. If we love your work, what writers should we read next who might not be getting profile? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I love Erica Foreman's work. She has a new book out. I think it's called Salt Body Shimmer. Yes. I love John Murillo. His book Contemporary American Poetry is like one of my favorite joints I've read this year. Trying to think. Dr. Sima Yasmin, who is a writer who she is probably more better known as like a sort of health expert. She runs like the health communications center at Stanford and is often on CNN talking about pandemics because this is like, it's sort of what she studies. But she has a book coming out, I think next year, that I helped edit, that is about kind of about like Ebola, but thinking largely about pandemics and how race interacts with health and racism. And yeah, I mean, I think that those poems are really interesting and really important. So yeah, those are a few. There's a bunch. Yeah. Let's see. Anyone else? I know we're like close. All right. Ooh, if you were gonna teach Finna and your influences while you wrote it, and we were in the class, what would we be reading? Damn, that's a good question. You know, I think, okay, so Ray, you'll appreciate this. I was actually thinking about the poem. In the poem On, there's like this, like, I really think about that poem. Whenever I read that poem, I think about Beowulf because there's all these like constructions that to me feel very much of a piece of like a text like that. So like when I say things like tellers of truths or bullet gifter, like this kind of thing, like I'm directly thinking about like the way that those sort of appellations, those like nicknames are like applied to our heroes in Beowulf, right? So, you know, maybe something like that, but you'd probably be reading something like, you know, Nikki Giovanni, like Black Talk, Black Feeling, maybe like Shane McCrae in The Language of My Captors, maybe like on a memoir tip, something like Heavy by Kiesi Lehman, or The Beautiful Struggle by Ta-Nehisi Coates, or maybe something like, what is it, We Gonna Be All Right by Jeff Chang. Yeah, I mean, a bunch of things probably, but yeah, we'll go with those. That'll work. Cool. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nate. Once again, the book Finna right here, available everywhere that you can get books. Obtain a copy immediately. Thanks to Rain for a fantastic introduction. And thanks, Rain, for an amazing poster. Really amazing work. And thank you all for being with us tonight for this Visiting Writers, distance apart but together. Remind you, next Tuesday, same time, same different Zoom link for which you should pre-register and find on the CC English page. We'll be here with Michael Sawyer talking about his new book, Black-Minded, The Political Philosophy of Malcolm X. We hope to see you here once again. Thank you, Nate Marshall. Wonderful. Get Finna when you can, where you can. Here it is. Thanks, everyone. Stay well. Stay in touch.